the surgeon who inspired Hannibal Lecter. We all know Hannibal Lecter, that chilling elegance, the brilliant psychiatrist with a taste for fine art and human flesh. His quiet, penetrating gaze is the stuff of nightmares. But what if I told you the real-life inspiration for this monster wasn't just a writer's invention? What if the true story was somehow even more disturbing? His name was Alfredo Ballí Treviño, a respected Mexican doctor whose real crimes were so precise, so gruesome, they laid the foundation for the legend of Hannibal Lecter. This is the true story of the man behind the monster. The fiction we know, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. The name alone sends a shiver down your spine. Created by author Thomas Harris, Lecter is the ultimate gentleman monster. He's a world-class forensic psychiatrist, a lover of classical music, and a cannibal who plates his victims like gourmet meals. Anthony Hopkins' Oscar-winning performance in The Silence of the Lambs burned him into our collective memory. A man of terrifying intellect and unnerving calm, who could dissect your mind just as easily as, well, the rest of you. He is a walking paradox, a sophisticated genius with a savage, primal hunger, and it's that duality that makes him so magnetic. But the seed for this character wasn't planted in a novelist's mind out of thin air. It was planted in a dusty Mexican prison during a chance encounter with a very real doctor and a very real killer. The man behind the myth. Long before Hannibal Lecter became a household name, there was Alfredo Ballí Treviño. Born into a wealthy, prominent family in Tamaulipas, Mexico, Ballí's life was mapped out for him. He was pushed towards excellence, and he delivered, pursuing a career in medicine in the bustling city of Monterrey. He was known for his sharp mind, his elegant style, and a quiet charisma that drew people in. Sources who knew him said that even in prison, he carried himself with an air of sophistication, known for his smart clothes and a gold watch. He also had a surprising streak of generosity, often treating the poorest patients in his community for free. On the surface, he was everything he was supposed to be: successful, respected, a pillar of society. But under that polished surface, a dark secret was festering, one that was about to erupt into an act of unbelievable brutality. A deadly affair. In the rigid, homophobic society of 1950s Mexico, keeping up appearances was everything. And Dr. Ballí, for all his success, was leading a double life. At the time of the crime, he was a medical intern with surgical training, and he was in a secret relationship with a fellow doctor, Jesus Castillo Rangel. The details of what went wrong between them are still murky, lost to time and the secrecy that surrounded their affair. Some say the fight was over money Rangel had borrowed. Others suggest a more personal crisis, that Ballí, feeling intense pressure to conform, decided to marry a woman, which would have shattered Rangel's world. Whatever the trigger, on a fateful day in October of 1959, their secret imploded. An argument broke out in Ballí's medical office, and it ended in a crime of passion that was anything but. It was cold, it was calculated, and it was carried out with the chilling precision of a surgeon. What happened next in that office wasn't a crime of rage. It was a procedure. Ballí first drugged Jesus Castillo Rangel, likely using an anesthetic from his own medical supplies. Once Rangel was unconscious, he moved him to a bathroom. There, with the steady hand of someone trained in surgery, he took a scalpel and slit his lover's throat. Then, methodically, he drained the body of all its blood, a detail that points to a mind that wasn't panicking, but was disturbingly in control. But the horror wasn't over. The truly gruesome part was what he did next. Ballí dismembered Rangel's body with meticulous surgical skill. He cut the remains into small, precise pieces and packed them neatly into a surprisingly small cardboard box. He then drove to a remote ranch and buried the box, trying to erase every last trace of Jesus Castillo Rangel. This wasn't a frenzied attack. It was a disposal. It was this specific, chilling detail, the ability to package his victim in a surprisingly small box that would later stick in the mind of a young journalist and help create a legendary killer. The unraveling Ball's careful plan fell apart almost right away. An acquaintance, maybe suspicious of what the doctor was up to, had apparently followed him to the burial site and tipped off the police. When homicide detectives showed up at his office, They came in pretending to be patients. The moment they revealed who they really were, Ballí's composure cracked, but not how you'd think. He allegedly tried to bribe them on the spot, offering them new cars, his practice, even his father's pharmacy if they would just make it all go away. When they refused, he was arrested. In custody, Ballí didn't deny a thing. He confessed. In fact, he was reportedly boastful, expressing a disturbing pride in how cleanly he had performed the dismemberment, as if it were a showcase of his surgical talent. He was put on trial, and in 1961 he was convicted and sentenced to death. He would be the last person in Mexico to ever receive a death sentence, though the sentence was never carried out and was eventually commuted. This story is a fascinating look at the disturbing line where fact and fiction bleed into one another. If you find these explorations into the dark side of human nature compelling, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Now I want to know what you think. What is it about this gentleman monster character type that we find so captivating? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The mind of the werewolf. The press nicknamed him the Werewolf of Nuevo León, and Ballí Treviño presented a chilling puzzle. How could a man who dedicated his life to healing be capable of such calculated butchery? He had a disarming charisma, an elegance and intelligence that completely masked the monster inside. This split personality is the very core of what makes Hannibal Lecter so terrifying. Ballí was calm, well-spoken, and inquisitive, a man who could draw you into a sophisticated conversation while hiding the capacity for pure evil. During his trial and imprisonment, rumors swirled that the murder of Jesus Castillo Rangel wasn't his only crime. He was a suspect in the disappearances of several hitchhikers in the area, though these other accusations were never proven. It just adds another layer of myth and uncertainty to his story, blurring the lines between the one horrific act he confessed to and a potentially much darker history. What makes a respected doctor turn into a monster? Those were the exact questions that would lead to a life-changing meeting. The birth of a legend. In the early 1960s, a 23-year-old American journalist named Thomas Harris was in Monterrey at the Topo Chico Penitentiary. He was on assignment for a magazine to interview an American inmate named Dykes Askew Simmons, who had recently been shot during an escape attempt. His life had been saved by one of the prison doctors. Harris arranged to talk with this doctor, who he knew only as Dr. Salazar. Harris later described the man he met as a small, lithe man with dark red hair, who stood very still and had a certain elegance about him. Harris expected to discuss the patient, Simmons, but was stunned when the doctor started analyzing him. Dr. Salazar began dissecting Harris's own thoughts on violence and torment. He was perceptive, intelligent, and deeply unsettling. It was only after the interview that the prison warden dropped the bombshell. "The doctor is a murderer," the warden told Harris. "As a surgeon, he could package his victim in a surprisingly small box. He will never leave this place. He is insane." That Dr. Salazar was, of course, Alfredo Ballí Treviño. That conversation never left Thomas Harris. Years later, when he was writing his novel Red Dragon, he needed a character who had a peculiar understanding of the criminal mind. And as he wrote, he realized who was waiting for him in that fictional cell. It wasn't Dr. Salazar, but it was his direct descendant, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. The aftermath and a strange redemption. The warden was wrong about one thing. Alfredo Ballí Treviño did leave that place. His death sentence was commuted to just 20 years. Inside the prison, he became a strange figure of authority and respect. He kept practicing medicine, treating fellow inmates, and even poor townspeople who would line up at the prison gates for medical care. He was released around 1981 and went right back to his old neighborhood in Monterrey. He lived the rest of his life quietly, almost as a recluse. He set up a small, simple medical office, reportedly in the very same building where he had committed the murder, and spent his last decades treating the sick and the elderly, often for free, as if atoning for the one crime that would forever define him. In a rare interview in 2008, just a year before he died of cancer, an elderly Ballí refused to talk about the murder. "I don't want to relive my dark past," he said. I don't want to wake up my ghosts, it's very hard. He passed away in 2009, having lived a life of shocking contradiction. So was Alfredo Ballí Treviño the real Hannibal Lecter? No, not exactly. Ballí wasn't a cannibal, and most of Lecter's specific traits were the product of Thomas Harris's incredible imagination. But the core of the character, that terrifying mix of healer and killer, the eerie elegance, the sharp intellect, and the profound, chilling insight into the human heart, all of that came from a real encounter in a Mexican prison. The story of Alfredo Ballí Treviño shows how real-life horror can spawn our most unforgettable fiction. He was a man of medicine who became a monster, and then, in a final, confusing twist, spent the rest of his days trying to heal again. His life is a stark reminder of the darkness that can hide behind a polished surface, and it raises uncomfortable questions about good and evil, crime and punishment, and whether the ghosts of the past can ever truly be put to rest. Page 1, Page 2, Page 4, Page 5.